minor and infrequent. That was the case until about 15 or so years ago. Over the past 15 years, after heavy rains, we have seen our yards fill up with water from surrounding streets and Patton Creek and its tributaries. The water that rushes through our yards is so powerful and strong that it can knock down children and adults and anything in its path. On more than one occasion, disabled and elderly individuals have had to be rescued. So I have some pictures just to show you. Like there's a picture of our beautiful yard, and then there's a picture of our yard when there's a big flood. There's water up to our patio. And then there's pictures of other people's yards that are, actually you can't tell their yard from the creek. There's just no distinction. We have had whole trees float down the creek. Dumpsters, trash bags, the gunk and sediment from the flooding ends up in our yards. And there's a picture of the dumpster that ended up and floated down the creek. I mean, down the creek, and that's happened more than once. Why has this change occurred? We know that construction up and downstream have covered once permeable land with asphalt, cement, and buildings, leaving no place for water to go. This has continued with construction up the mountain in Bluff Park now adding to the runoff. We know that water flowing from the impermeable pavement, substances in cans in the backs of buildings, dumpsters, etc., carries pollutants. The creek has become shallower as flooding widens the creek. All the sediment from the sides of the creek serves to make the creek shallower, resulting in less capacity and thus more flooding and more pollution. The continual response from the city is, well, the flooding and pollution happen on private property and the city is not allowed under the law to get involved and go on private property. They maintain that it is up to the residential property owners to handle flooding and the resulting pollution. That is no answer at all, since it is clear that individual residential property owners are not the source of the flooding and the pollution. We do not create the conditions affecting stormwater. However, we believe that where public health and community welfare are at stake, local government must be involved, and we believe this is allowed under the law. What is a government for if not to protect its citizens? I have the following questions for ADEM. Is the city's responsibility for stormwater management limited to controls for city-owned, leased, and maintained facilities, or is it responsible for all structural controls? When the city signs off on a construction project's controls, what is the city's responsibility for follow-up? As one example, if a retention pond is one of the approved controls, what happens if the retention pond fails or otherwise does not operate correctly? Should the city monitor the industrial and residential sites in Hoover which may be polluting the waterways in Hoover? What action should Hoover take about the increase in flooding and subsequent pollution due to new developments? We have expressed our concerns to the city of Hoover over the years, and especially after the catastrophic flood on October 6, 2021. Lives were lost, and homes, yards, and other property destroyed or damaged. The city had engaged consultants to review problems with flooding in Hoover, and there were very minor, limited, specific recommendations about the Creekview Drive area. But to our knowledge, there has been no follow-up on even these limited recommendations. In closing, we would like to work with the city to develop action plans and to make data detailing the city's efforts available to citizens. Best management practices, as advised by the EPA and ADEM, would include community participation in the city's stormwater management efforts. Would also require transparency in the city's efforts, including monitoring and reporting. This would be so helpful. I would just like to close to say we all want to help. We live here. We love Hoover. Obviously, we've lived here all our lives. But it is so sad at this point. My children played in our yards all this time. There was no, for decades, right? And there was no, we didn't really have any concerns. But now, because of the pollution that has come from the creek and all the sediment and the god-awful stuff that ends up in our yards. I don't want my grandchildren to play there. So please let us know if you would like any more information about our questions and concerns. Thank you for this opportunity. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And you can send copies of the pictures to that email that's in the notice, that water-permits.adem.alabama.gov.
Okay.
I now recognize Bob Hardy. Right there.
Hi, I'm Bob Hardy. I'm the president of the Valley Lake Association Incorporated, which owns Indian Valley Lake, and represent about 110 homeowners on that lake. And thank you for having us here and having this forum. Three gentlemen here clearly explain the impact that we're having with this lake. And I know it may sound narrow focused just to think about this lake when it's the entire city of Hoover that's at stake here in regards to the permit approval. I know the lawyer said that you can't come on the private property and there's a violation of the state laws, etc., and so forth. And my understanding pretty much is that our lake is used as a catch basin. It's designated as a catch basin. It is a private lake. However, the city has deemed it a catch basin for them in their wastewater management system. Yet, they cannot access private property to maintain it. They refuse to maintain via other properties and accesses that they have. I understand the law is the law, and you have to abide by the law. So maybe the law needs to be changed, but the permitting process is utilizing private property as part of their permitting process, and I ask that you guys reconsider the process and reevaluate that and perhaps address those issues that have been brought forth tonight. And I really appreciate you guys giving me a chance to come up and talk to you. I don't have a bunch of fancy slides and pictures and a bunch of supporting documents, but nonetheless, I do represent a pretty large population that is in Hoover, and I appreciate that you guys have given us this forum to voice our concerns. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I now recognize Jana Yvonne Owens.
That's
Okay,
me.
there you go.
Thank you. So I am Jana Owens.
Okay.
I have a doctoral degree in environmental biology. And I also was employed by Jefferson County's Stormwater Management Authority for several years. So, and I have family that lives here. So I feel really qualified to address a couple of technical issues. However, Mr. Corley was so fascinating the way that he was describing what the MS4 and its responsibilities are, that I wanted to read into the record the first sentence of the permit under discussion tonight. And that says, your permit area. This permit applies to the corporate boundaries of the city of Hoover that are regulated by the permittee and discharged to the permittee's municipal separate storm sewer system MS4. So, within the boundaries, it's your game. It's not pick and choose. And I just wanted that more accurately stated. The two technical aspects I would like to suggest don't deal with a tragedy like with your lakes or your homes, but it's addressing the systemic problem. And that is, it's a watershed. It's a cumulative effect. What's happening to your house and your house is coming from other places and coalescing on you. So unless the authority that is over all of that addresses it, then nothing ever changes. So if you rubber stamp more and more development without consideration of where the heck is all this water coming from, the stormwater runoff. The stormwater management plan talks a lot about stormwater runoff quality. 90% of it is about the quality, and very little about the quantity. It is the quantity that is the 800-pound alligator in the room. And I believe that there should be an adoption of a percent impervious, some kind of sliding spectrum of if you're proposing new development or redevelopment, it's got to be a direct consideration. In the stormwater management plan, they talk a lot about the quality and caliber of their GIS department. That would be a lunch break for somebody to take a very specific look at where's your percent impervious within this municipality. What is the hydrology and where are the issues coming from? So when I was actually sampling Patton Creek for my doctoral studies and the Cahaba near here, impervious surface was already starting to be a problem. And that is going to be something that they have to discuss. So you gotta pick a number, you gotta pick a percent. You can't just keep saying maximum extent practicable. That's not a quantity. These are just words. So there has to be some kind of addressing of the issue to even retrofit it and to mitigate it a little. The second point I would like to suggest, and it's the power that you have, and that is, I would like to suggest an interjurisdictional permit with Vestavia. Because of the water during a storm event, I have been at the red light on 31 at the bottom of the hill where Chuck E. Cheese gets one blown out regularly, and watched the dirt came in from the flow, and they were having to get all of us out of there in our cars. And this is sliding down 31. It's from Vestavia. It was generated in Vestavia, and it hits Patton Creek right there. I mean, when you look at the GIS imagery of this, it's very powerful. So you've seen the images of Chuck E. Cheese and all this kind of stuff. It's just a lake. Patton Creek is right there. It's a channel. It takes all that water and it goes with it. So to reiterate my 2 points, my third point, an accurate description of what the MS4 and its responsibilities are. The second is choose a quantifiable figure to say we have to stick to this standard when we're building. And the third is interjurisdictional agreement to address what's coming off Vestavia into Patton Creek. Thank you for your time. I get so nervous doing this. Thank you.
I now recognize Susan Karst. Pardon?
When is the cutoff time for
5 o'clock tomorrow.
Okay. Well, my name is Susan Karst, and I am a next door neighbor of Becky. We are on the Patton Creek area, neighborhood there. I am showing you our home, which is probably at this point, we've lived there 7 years, about 30%, 25 to 30% gone. We planted all sorts of beautiful flowers and things, and it's a sandbar from our last major flood that's just now, that was years ago, that's just now receding and going away. I know these are personal anecdotes, but I reviewed the permit, and I didn't see much wording for quantity so much as quality, but it's the quantity of the water that's hitting us all. They put in this big, huge parking lot of a bank and a Northern Tool Shop and the Aspire Nursing Home. That all comes into the Patton Creek now. And so that's added into our flooding. The impervious percentage, we don't know what it is. You have two types of landscapes, this is from your handbook, that's urban and natural. And the urban, of course, are your parking lots, buildings, roads. The natural landscape is the low impact development, efforts to do the drainage ponds when you're putting in a subdivision, natural undisturbed areas, green infrastructure, those type of things. And you can see 55% of the runoff,
Can you go back to the?
I'm
sorry.
trying to see,
No, okay.
55% of the runoff, it gets 10% of it percolates only 10% into the ground, 15% into the ground. If you have 10% runoff, 45% of that will soak percolate down into the water aquifer. And in this last drought we've been having, that would help if we could start more lower impact development. And there's very little of that addressed in the permit. It doesn't seem important. And I say that in judgment, simply from my own experience and all these folks' experience. That's why we're here. We are so frustrated with the city of Hoover. And it's really rich to point at ADEM as it being their problem, Mr. Attorney. But I think that we here call ADEM, call FEMA. It's not our problem, it's your problem. That's your private property. Yes, it is our private property, but you put in those commercial development parking lots in that nursing home. You approved all those developments. You approved everything. And you are not doing anything to mitigate or reduce any of this runoff. So, we'll handle it how we need to, but it needs to be handled. And thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. I now recognize Thomas Van Ness.
My name's Thomas Van Ness. I live at 3117 Paradise Acres in Hoover, Alabama, 35244. I've lived there since February of 1991. There was a complete lake over the whole area there. It was not covered in. It was not flooded up. You could watch the water flowing down Patton Creek and going out over the dam. Nobody thought anything of it. Used to be an old Boy Scout camp there. They put the dam there back in the 30s, maybe even the 20s. I don't know. I don't know that anybody knows. But the whole point is now, if you were to take a look at the picture, half the lake, the big half, y'all can see it out there, is still fairly deep and everything else. But the channel that goes to the dam has all flooded up. First time this happened was when Patton Creek Shopping Center was built. They didn't put up the concrete, I forget what they call them, but it's the things that hold the soil in. And when they were building it, a whole bunch came down. And we went and talked to the city, the Paradise Lake Association. And they said, we can't do anything about it because
On private property.
And the thing was, okay, so here we were, 30, 40 families got together. We started brainstorming, And we realized that Google did satellite photography. And we got before Patton Creek and after Patton Creek. And it was very obvious that it had been filled. And we got a lawyer, and the lawyer took the two photographs in there, and a settlement was made. And they dredged out a whole bunch of soil. If you go to the Chevron on Highway 150, that used to be a slough, and they filled it up with all that dredging dirt. I don't even know if they got permission to do that, but they just dumped the dirt there, and eventually I suppose they'll build a gas station or something on it. You say, well, why bring this up now? All that's on these pictures, which y'all can't see, sorry, has clogged up the lake for about 300 yards, and it's now islands that, like right now when we haven't had any rain, you can literally walk across it from the Paradise Acres side to the Applebee's side. Where did that come from? The watershed, the Patton Creek watershed, stuff coming down. But notice there have been a lot of pictures tonight about people, I believe Mr. Winther and some of the other folks here. They have all this stuff coming down that watershed. It's digging out the whole ditch. It's coming down from Shades Mountain. It's coming down from all the way through, and it's dumping all the dirt that it washed in because the new subdivisions were put in, and then they've used our lake and Indian Lake, and they said, oh, this is a catch basin. I don't remember getting paid if it's private property. I don't remember we ever got paid for the use of our lake as a catch basin. And that's what's happening. And it's filling up. It's turning into a mosquito mess. We didn't do anything. It's all from up the hill. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Oh, and if you don't mind, and Ms. Cars too, if y'all email your pictures to that water dash
I can
permits.
give you these, but you probably don't want them on the thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just,
We'll get them to you.
Yeah, just email them to the email address on the notice, please. Okay. Let's see. I now recognize, oh my, Cherie Beavers?
Correct.
I got it, all right.
Just like a little animal. Hi, Cherie Beavers. I live at 641 South Sanders Road. I can't really say a whole lot more than what everybody else has said up here, other than my private property, of course, has had major erosion. And when we moved in 2000, our back half of our yard was like an oasis. We had this little stream that ran down beside our house, and it was all nice and wooded, and it was beautiful. Well, now it is a sight for sore eyes. I have a lake that's across the street from me. And ever since we moved in, we have noticed that the one drainage from the lake that comes down the hill is the only thing it's the only drainage that has been used since we've lived there. And over the years, I've noticed it keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. It has flooded the road in front of our house. We have sinkholes. We have a retaining wall, which is about to let go because of all the erosion. We've had this problem since 2014. In 2017, I complained to the city regarding what was going on. They sent someone out to my house in engineering, and they told my husband, yes, you have a problem. That was all we ever heard from them. So on September 6th, when we had all the flooding, it was a major disaster. Back in 2014, we lost one of our crepe myrtles, and now we're down to 2. And it has just, I'm about to lose my shed, which is at the end of my driveway. My driveway has buckled up. And I am so tired of hearing that it's not the city's fault. They are the ones that caused this. They are the ones that set the permits. They are the ones that told the engineers, the construction people, what they can do and what they can't do. Well, it was obvious that they didn't do a very good job of telling them what they needed to do with the spill-off. Because now we have a new subdivision, which is Smith Lake, and the runoff there runs into the creek behind the lake, runs into the lake, and now runs into my yard. I have had pieces of my neighbor's driveway in my yard. The water has come down there so hard. Granted, they have done a lot of construction on the culvert there. They built a 12-foot wall, and they put in new piping. But as a result of all the flooding, I now have an exposed sanitary pipe. And it is at least 6 feet above the ground. I have called the county. They tell me it's not a problem, call us if you smell something. And I never knew when we moved in that there was a pipe that ran up underneath the creek. And all I ever hear, like I said, is that we can't go on private property. Well, you have 5 feet easement of everybody's property if y'all need to do something. My easement, my 5-foot easement has now, I've lost 3/4 of that 5 feet easement. That's how bad my property has eroded. I have also seen iron deposits in the ditch across on the other side, because I have pictures of those, very nice pictures. So we get a lot of settlement. The foliage, I've seen twice since we've lived there, they've come out and gotten rid of the foliage on that side of the road, which from what I understand, that is their responsibility. Just to let you know how bad it's been, we had some beautiful elephant ears growing up in the ditch over there. And every time it rained, they got swooped down. So everything that comes out of that lake comes into the drainage ditch on the side of my house. They did a great job, but the problem is they didn't look at the ditch, and it's not going to be wide enough. It's not going to be deep enough to capture all the water that goes down the creek. It's going to end up flooding, and then my back's to the same situation I had before. Thank you. I'm so glad that y'all came today.
Thank you. I now recognize Tim Carroll.
Pass.
Pass, okay. That's allowed. I now recognize Erica Harwell.
Hi, I'm Erica Harvell. I live at 3408 Hurricane Road in Hoover. Thank you for your time tonight. So I will be submitting this. It contains photos as well. I didn't think to make a blow up for everyone, sorry. So this, my comments are regarding this permit draft. We live downstream from the construction site at the preserve in Hoover, and the Hurricane Branch Creek runs through our property. We don't have a backyard, we have a creek with beautiful trees. Since we bought our home 5 years ago, our section of the creek has been affected by an increase in the amount of sediment pollution, trash, and high volume of stormwater runoff from that construction area at the preserve. After a rain event, the creek can rise by several feet, become turbulent and high velocity, and turns orange from the high sediment load. We often find trash in the form of styrofoam cups, chip bags, other items suggesting it was a construction site worker's lunch at some point. The increased volume and turbulence of the water has eroded our creek bank by several feet. This year, over the summer, 2 of our fully matured trees that used to be stabilized by the creek bank had their root systems completely eroded after years of rain events, and they fell across the creek. Regarding the draft permit, I have comments specific to Part 2.B.4 titled Construction Site Stormwater Runoff Control. This section of the permit is intended to reduce the pollutants and stormwater coming off of construction sites, but these rules are not currently being followed by the construction contractor at the preserve. After my husband and I started noticing the higher volume of water and high sediment load coming through our creek, we filed a complaint with ADEM and looked up the construction permit to see any previous inspection reports of this construction site. We found 17 inspections done by ADEM dating back to 2014 that found multiple violations in each inspection. Examples of violations include improperly maintained silt fences, slopes not stabilized, soil stockpiles not stabilized, construction debris and trash not disposed of properly. Erosion rills were observed, a storm drain inlet did not have proper protection, and excessive on-site sediment was observed against the silt fences. I made that list only referencing 2 of those 17 reports. The inspection reports are consistent at finding multiple violations. My greatest concern is the ability of the City of Hoover to meet the applicable environmental laws, rules, and regulations set forth in this permit. The city is either not capable or not willing to enforce the rules in this permit, and we see the evidence of this firsthand because of the damage that's been done to our section of the creek in just 5 years. And there's much more construction activity to come in the preserve. U.S. Steel and Capstone Development have set forth a new proposal for a vast apartment complex, parking garage, boutique hotel, retail space, all while cutting back on the existing green space. Hurricane Branch Creek can't sustain this level of development, especially if the city is going to continue to be so lax at enforcing best management practices with this construction contractor. The City of Hoover should not be conducting these construction site inspections. It's a conflict of interest to be both in business with the developer and also be responsible for holding that developer accountable for their environmental violations. And I have pictures here of what our creek looks like. This is actually taken by our real estate what's the word? Person? Agent. Thank you. This is so nerve-wracking. Our real estate agent took this photo of us. It's a very cute small creek in a beautiful wooded area. This is the turbidity that started coming off of the construction site. This is the increased water volume that rises by several feet every time it rains now. Yes. And this is what the creek currently looks like with all of the trees that have fallen across it in the last year. And this is examples of the construction site trash that we end up picking up after every time it rains. So thank you very much for your time tonight. I really hope something positive comes out of this. And here's that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I now recognize, hold on a second, Rob Belize.
Yeah, pretty good. Closer to most folks.
By the lady I drew up around.
And Rob Balaz, that's B-A-L-A-Z-S. Thanks a lot for giving us an opportunity to be heard here, really appreciate it. Similar to some of the other things that you've heard tonight, I live in a neighborhood where we have a huge problem with stormwater runoff. That problem was caused by a development above us, Magnolia Grove. That's a 40, 50 house neighborhood, something like that. That neighborhood, all of the runoff from the road, the cul-de-sac, the houses, the lawns, driveways, all of that goes to a detention pond. So that's a good deal. It exits the detention pond in a 23-inch pipe. That pipe empties into an open channel, at the other end of which is an 18-inch pipe that was there pre-existing. The city knew this. There was an engineer who came out and did a study and said, look, that's going to be a problem. Permitted it anyway. So now we have a problem. When there's a big runoff, it just straight rejects out of the 18-inch pipe, runs overland down my yard and my two neighbors behind me. The other problem is the 18-inch pipe, when it's completely full, blows the manhole cover in my neighbor's yard. It actually broke it. And then there's a fountain of water in addition to all this water running downhill. One of my neighbors had his driveway undercut so badly twice you could stand under it. My other neighbor has lost her landscaping, her grass, her topsoil, everything washes down into the stream behind me. It's an open channel that this 18-inch pipe empties into at a right angle. So there's this fire hose of water blasting at what was a relatively small, little creek thing that's eating away my backyard, okay? The problem is that the city then had Shoal Engineering come out and do a study. And they said, okay, we can solve the problem. We need a 20-inch relief pipe, enter the ditch parallel, put in an energy dissipating manhole, and some riprap to slow it down as it's headed down towards Sulphur Springs. City looked at that and said, gosh, that's on private property. Okay? This isn't maintenance. We're not talking about removing rocks and sticks, right? This was permitted by the city, knowing there would be a problem, and now going, ooh, sorry, can't do that. So however Mr. Corley's argument goes, I think we need to be really clear what the city is responsible for. There's no way they can permit things and tell everybody who lives around it, gosh, you guys got to dig up and make bigger pipes, right? I mean, that's not reasonable. So that's where we are. Thanks.
Thank you. I now recognize Beth Stewart.
Hey, hello everyone. I'm Beth Stewart with Cahaba River Society, 2717 7th Avenue South in Birmingham. We have a lot of members in Hoover, many of whom are here tonight. And I'm sitting here, I've been doing urban planning work for 15 years before with Cahaba River Society for 28 years. Stormwater's been my major focus during that time. I'm sitting here amazed at the level of detailed knowledge, technical knowledge, all of these citizens have developed about stormwater regulation. And also, it's really unfortunate that they've had to do that because they aren't getting the level of protection that they need from the regulatory agencies and from Hoover. So I just kind of wanted to recognize and appreciate all of their hard work and what they are suffering. We submitted comments previously, but we're submitting additional comments tonight, primarily in response to the City of Hoover's comments, because we were so concerned that considering the level of serious stormwater pollution problems and damage from stormwater volume that we're seeing in Hoover that are not only causing property damage but degrading the Cahaba River, that the city's desire is to weaken their stormwater commitments and permit requirements. And we're here to advocate that in support of what ADEM's trying to accomplish with the modest improvements to the permit. the city is arguing that many of the requirements in the prior permit and the draft permit are not specifically laid out in federal regulations, and thus ADEM can't require them under state law. And their position does not take into account fundamental aspects of the regulatory construction and history of the whole MS4 program, which we believe does give ADEM full justification for what you're expecting of the city. The MS4 program, as y'all know well, was designed to set overall expectations and standards that municipalities must meet through their stormwater programs, but to leave flexibility for the right solutions and best practices to be incorporated into the MS4 permits as necessary to meet each community's and state's water quality goal. There was never any intent to have some sort of detailed laying out in federal regulations of every requirement that would happen for stormwater. And also, the federal regulations include the concept of meeting requirements, quote, to the maximum extent practicable. And that was always understood to be a moving target. As stormwater practices and technology advance over the years, thus the city's ability to improve their stormwater program should advance. And we agree with ADEM's approach over the years that in each permit cycle, requirements will advance to meet what is now feasible and maximum extent practicable. So we just feel that the city's overall argument just is not in keeping with what the fundamental requirements are of the Clean Water Act regulations. And an example is the post-construction stormwater practices that we've heard so much about tonight. And I'm really glad to hear that everybody recognizes it's not just water quality, it's volume. And that volume is damaging water quality. And we can't improve water quality unless we control volume. And so we really encourage ADEM to start, finding more and more ways to include volume control as a part of the permits. Here's an example of kind of how this plays out. Cahaba River is designated critical habitat, has a TMDL pollution reduction plan. The city is required by the permit to do their part to reduce sediment to meet those targets. We can only reduce sediment if we control volume of runoff. We've heard multiple examples of the sediment impacts that are being caused by volume of runoff. And we have got to have green infrastructure and low impact development practices to reduce volume of runoff. And so we believe that the city's comments that they cannot in any way be required to even just encourage LID and GI is just not accurate in terms of what the law requires. And we are glad to see that you've upped the expectations about that, and still just expecting the city to encourage LID and GI is not requiring them to do it. We think they should be required to, they should require it. There are several other areas in our comments, and we've appreciated working with Hoover and the stormwater staff in many aspects of their stormwater program. We have seen areas they've improved, but we also disagree with several other areas in the city's comments. We do think they should be expected to lead, not just participate in litter control activities. We do think they should have to prevent or minimize water quality impacts to the MEP, not just reduce them. We do believe that that the city should be required to manage and respond to hazardous spills that may reach waterways instead of will reach waterways. That indicates they would already have polluted the waterways by the time the city was required to respond. And there's several other comments along those lines, and we really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I have no more registration cards, but is there anyone that did not register to speak that would like to speak at this time? Hold your hand high.
Oh, good.
Oh, there you go.
Let's talk.
Okay. State your name and if you represent anybody.
My name is Kyle Airy. I live at 3404
Can you
Hurricane
spell
Road.
that?
Kyleary.
A-R-Y, okay.
I'm a future 30-year resident of Hoover. I've never governmented before, so this is my first time. And this is enough to bring me out. and somebody who's never done anything like this, spoken publicly, like, we have a problem. Clearly, we've all addressed it, right? You know what the problem is. We need to fix it. We can't give any more permits for a new building when we can't control what we already have going on. My daughters call it the chocolate milk river on Hurricane Branch. When it rains, it looks like Willy Wonka in my backyard. We're not controlling it. We need to do a better job. So, whatever that means, I had a whole line when she left about trusting a doctor more than a lawyer, but I guess she's gone. So if y'all know her, just tell her I said that, please. So, thank you all for being here. Can't wait to live here for another 30 years.
Thank you. Anybody else would wish to speak that didn't register? Okay, well, seeing no hands, please be advised that the public comment period will end at 5:00 p.m. tomorrow, Friday, October 20th. All comments must be received at the offices of the department in Montgomery by then, including all the pictures that we didn't get copies of tonight, please. After consideration of all oral and written comments, the department will make its determination regarding the proposed permit action and prepare a response to all relevant comments received. Thank you for your participation this evening. This hearing is adjourned.